So welcome to the TechTruth podcast. Carson here with Lambo, two tech talent geeks, talking with some of the most innovative IT leaders in the industry. We'll be sharing their journey, lessons learned, maybe a facepalm or two. Today's guest is Craig Corkill, distinguished IT leader whose career spans across significant roles, currently directing technology at a renowned hospital to overseeing global enterprise software development and project management in the fast-paced world of insurance, titled to be specific. Known for his unique ability to develop collaboration across various departments, navigate complex M&A integrations with a focus on modernization, and champions mentorship to drive employee engagement and accountability. Craig brings a wealth of knowledge in transforming IT departments into critical contributors to organizational success. We look forward to talking about his journey, discussing the critical connections of technology leadership, strategic decision making, and the skill of building resilient, forward thinking teams. Craig, thanks for being here, man.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity. Looking forward to chatting and interacting with you guys.
What a great intro.
No kidding. I'm like, oh my goodness, that is that's a lot of words to describe me.
Where do we start, Carson? This is crazy.
Well, that's a perfect segue, Craig. For those who may not be familiar, tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
Yeah, so definitely seasoned IT professional. Been at it for over 25, 26, 27 years. Done a lot of different roles. Started out as kind of the technical person doing the hands-on, the keyboard kind of work, supporting people, interacting, trying to add value and making sure that the company can be successful. Quickly found that I really had a desire to lead organizations, lead people. So that let me kind of move into running teams that supported traditional infrastructure. After I got kind of bored with that, I moved out into the business, working with the business to understand the value creation that technology was bringing. So was running as a BRM for a while, business relationship manager. That led to an opportunity to stand up a project management office, which led to an opportunity to run a global software development organization. So had all of that, and once I felt I had done everything I could there, decided to make a transition and have found my new home in healthcare, which is a leap from kind of my title insurance days. However, it really resonates with me, the why behind what I'm doing every day. I can walk around and interact with patients and visibly see what technology is bringing and how it's quite literally changing lives.
Yeah. I got a quick question, and it's an easy one, I think. I hope it's an easy one, Craig. You mentioned that you kind of didn't fall into leadership, but you figured out that you were good at leading teams and organizations. It's an ever-changing, I think 20 years ago, if I said, what are those characteristics in yourself that made you determine, I'm a good leader of people and processes or whatever. I know 20 years ago, it's probably a different answer because today the work environment, the climate, the M&A, just everything's different. So what are those characteristics that you're like, hey, I got these, I can do this, right? Because not every leader should be a leader, and some people that aren't leaders probably need to be, right? So what is that? Maybe you can help the audience determine, hey man, I got this in me, and maybe I do need to step up.
Yeah, I think foundationally you have to be a good collaborator. And I don't mean somebody that can talk well, because in my mind, collaboration is a lot of listening to. I didn't necessarily learn that as a new leader years and years ago, but it's certainly something that I had worked on doing a better job of, in recognizing people collaborate differently, people interact differently, and so I've I've over time built a skill set where I can really assess somebody quickly and understand how best to have a conversation with them to get to where we need to be. Um, Beyond that, part of being a leader is providing direction for your team. And so with direction, you have to be able to make a decision or figure out how best to get to a decision. They're looking to you for answers, and you can't come back with, well, I don't know. I don't know is an acceptable answer, but it needs to be followed with, but I can figure it out. And so that's, as a new leader, if I was to step into that role again, I'd really, lean on collaboration being key, with a firm understanding that everybody's different and they're going to collaborate different ways, and understanding that. And certainly as, generations continue to rely more on, this awesome technology that we have at our fingertips, staying aware of, how different people can leverage technology to communicate is equally important. So you can't always rely on how you used to do it. You have to continue to adapt.
Great answer. That's phenomenal. I have another, hopefully softball question, but I don't know if it's softball these days. I was reading an article. They're talking about work ethic and how work ethic is, and it's all under the, how to lead a successful team. And you certainly want people that have a good work ethic, right? Well, how do you define what a good work ethic is these days? With, you've got, working in an office scenario, you've got some hybrid stuff, and you've also got some remote workers. I'm sure you've got a team that's dispersed all over the country, if not the world, that you rely on for services or solutions or whatever. How do you define a good work ethic, and how do you instill that in your team?
So work ethic can be looked at a couple of ways. And I would say the traditional sense was a boss looking at, well, how many hours are you putting in to execute on your job?
Yeah.
While I think that was a measure at one point in time, I would say that it was short-sighted in how we were measuring success in that. In my mind, work ethic, or a good work ethic, is how are you maximizing your effectiveness in the minutes that you are working. So are you working in an intelligent way? Are you communicating the right way so you're not spending, days waiting for answers for things? Are you working on the right stuff? Are you just working really hard, or are you working on the things that are really providing value to the business? And that's a tipping point that I had as I made my transition out of my infrastructure role years ago and into the business. Was you really need to understand, what's important to the business and how you're enabling what they're working on through technology or with technology. Putting in, 80 hours to do things that don't necessarily move the needle on the business side, you kind of have to scratch your head and wonder, am I doing things the right way? So I know that's not a direct answer about it.
No, it
However,
makes sense. It makes sense. Yeah.
That's my view. And you're right. We have made a transition from being very in the office as a society to some organizations going hybrid, some organizations going fully remote. That does it adds complexity to how you're measuring effectiveness of employees. And again, it goes back to, first you got to collaborate. You need to make sure that they feel connected. That's one of the biggest pitfalls, in my opinion, of having remote only workers is they begin to feel disconnected from the mission of the organization. So I'm very intentional in my conversations with people and ensuring that they're pulled back in and still feeling as though they're part of the larger group, because they're critical. However, being isolated can lead you to disconnection.
Yep.
Feels as though time management is somewhere sprinkled within that work ethic somewhere. That was kind
Gotta
of
have.
somewhere earlier on, I picked up on, being able to manage your time, basically prioritizing what needs to get done versus what's something that you could either push down the road or delegate. In your case, or in IT leadership cases, you could delegate a certain task off. From a time management standpoint, and more importantly, based upon where folks are, and kind of, we mentioned this remote work, but also hybrid. um, it sounds as though where you are now, there's somewhat of a hybrid approach. If I'm incorrect, correct me. But um, how did you guys go about setting that up to where, yes, you feel like the employees are still engaged, still involved, but obviously still have the ability to kind of move and traverse about the cabin, if you will, while still getting everything done? Because again, I would imagine in the healthcare space, just based on previous experience working with those clients, um, things can change pretty quickly. But also there's a little bit, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a little bit different pace of play as it pertains to the healthcare hospital versus, let's say, insurance or oil and gas or another industry. What would you say is something that you guys have kind of keyed in on to make sure everybody's still kind of moving in that same direction at the pace needed?
Yeah, so where healthcare is probably a little different, and where it almost lends itself, a little more so to being able to be effective even in a hybrid setting, is they're very prescriptive, or we are very prescriptive in our collaboration, inter team and extra team. So what I mean by that is, as a team, I can tell you with certainty, every one of our groups meet every morning between 8 and 8:30 and have a conversation about what's working well, what are the open issues we need to work on, what are the stumbling blocks that we need to address. That is prescribed and everybody follows that. And then there's a meeting of those meetings for us to have cross conversation around, from a bigger picture, what all is going on within information technology and what needs to be communicated out to the business and organization so that they're aware of what's going on. That prescribed interaction that continues really lends itself well to people still feeling connected. In other organizations, while there may be meetings that occur, I don't know that I've seen, at least consistently, that approach being taken. I personally, whenever we made the transition in 2020 to fully remote for a year and a half, I had daily just touch base with every single one of my employees, even though it was it was a process and it did take time. However, having that intentional conversation with them just to make sure that they were good, that they had what they needed to work for the day, that there wasn't anything that I needed to help them with, allowed for me and them to feel as though we were still working together on things. So I hate to continue to go back to collaboration. I don't hate to, but I mean, I think that's kind of the undertone that you'll hear throughout a lot of the discussion with me.
I like the word that you use, prescribed. It's fitting.
It's almost like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
method. It's almost like a methodology that you've honed or following. It sounds very reminiscent of like some of the agile ceremonies. I'm sure there's different. It's morphed into other things, but it sounds like it's very thorough. There's a way to communicate at all different levels, and each level has its own important things it needs to follow through with. And then, of course, the collab and communication. I mean, I think everybody listening to this knows that those are keys, and it sounds easy, but it's so hard to do it effectively.
Yes.
right? Oh, I'm collaborating. Are you though? Are you?
Right.
You're collaborating, but you're peeing on every idea somebody else is bringing up. That's not collab. Well, it's a form of collaboration, but it's not moving the ball forward. There's ways to communicate more effectively, right, as a team. So,
Yeah.
I know we spoke a little bit, before the podcast, and you were mentioning that you've kind of honed the skill of being able to make decisions. You're an effective decision maker. I think that's another topic or an idea that our audience that tune in may be interested to hear. Were you always a good decision maker? What criteria do you look at? Do you have like a to-do list or a criteria list, or how did you come into this? Because I've worked for a lot of people, and I've been leading teams, and making decisions is can be really hard. But as a leader, you have to. I think we alluded to before, you have to be able to make decisions, and that's either with collaboration with the team, and there's a final decision that needs to be made on a bunch of different things. Or is it just how you're hardwired, Craig, or is this something that you can develop? And if you had to develop that skill, how did you do it?
Well, there's a lot to that question.
Great.
And it probably starts a little bit with just how I think. And what I mean by that is, in my mind, indecision is worse than making a wrong decision. I would rather fail and fail fast than to sit and continue to contemplate, do we go right or left? I'd rather go left and hit the wall and then course correct and go right. And so
Pain is a good
yeah.
learning tool.
And so while that's not perfect, especially if you don't approach it the right way, I feel as though that's a better approach than just sitting back. What I have learned is, well, a couple of things. One, I study a lot. I read a lot about different technologies. I read a lot about the businesses that I work within, so that I'm at least aware of, potential big pitfalls or potential big rocks that might be in the way of us getting to an outcome. So kind of going through that process and being aware of kind of the big don't go here's is important.
Yeah.
Second is surrounding yourself with the right people. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, probably ever, but I'm very intentional about ensuring that I have different perspectives that help advise me on, maybe situations that I don't know the exact way we should go. So I value those relationships, and I'll ping those individuals and say, hey, we're trying to get from A to C. What's the quickest way we get there? Do we have to go through B, or is there a different approach? And so that's really something that I've done. And the important thing there, and the thing that I did a lot of studying around, was understanding, like being able to understand different people's strengths and kind of what it is that they bring to your relationship. So for example, there are people that you can ask a question, but they might not have an immediate response. They really need a moment to kind of think through. And a lot of times you give them that time, they'll come back with a very intelligent and probably something you didn't think of kind of response. That's not me, but that's, I like to have those people around me. Then there's people that are more tied on, kind of the emotional side of decision making, and really understanding people's feelings and the empathy that goes along with that, and recognizing that that's equally a strength to consider whenever you're making a decision. Certainly if there's change management that's involved, that's you have to have those people that are around you. You also need to know people that are connectors, people that may not know the answer, but they're the guy that knows a guy. So surrounding yourself with folks like that is also important. Um, I said it's complex. I don't know that I I individually make all the decisions. I've just over time recognized what my strengths are and then surrounded myself with people that can help kind of shore up the areas that maybe I'm not as strong in.
It sounds like the amount of research you do, it gives you, you say you're not the smartest guy in the room, but that research adds to being able to ask questions, intelligent questions, and figure things out so you don't bump into that wall as many times as you probably would have. Plus you've got a good gut, it sounds like. I don't know if it's through personal experience or work experience or both, but that's also a compass for you. I think it's a combination of all of the things that you've learned throughout your life that allows you to be a good decision maker. So some of it I think is learned and some of it is how you're hardwired, but surrounding yourself with smart people and people that think differently. I mean, bro, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. You're doing the right thing, obviously. So I think our audience is going to like that answer.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's something that it probably took some years to really reflect.
A lot of bumps
and
and bruises,
understand.
scrapes. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm confident in my approach now, and it certainly has served me well.
Would you say that most of those advisors slash mentors that you just described are those internal to the company, or are these more personal connections outside of that you just kind of accumulated over time, and those relationships have just kind of blossomed into this point, I guess, where you can rely on them to give you good honest feedback, and while some may take a little bit, you have those that are able to just throw back or volley back that answer that you needed right then and there, depending on what you're asking.
Honestly, it's a mixture of all. I certainly have internal resources that I rely on. I have external resources that I rely on. I have personal resources that I rely on. Some of it goes back to my grandfather was a great leader in the title insurance space. And I recall how he treated people and how people gravitated to him. And so while that may not be kind of my superpower, I always think back, well, how would he approach a conversation with somebody like this? And that's really, lent me to really work on empathy and work on making more personal connections with folks.
Gotcha. So would you call yourself a mentor at this point in time? Do you have anybody that maybe looks to you at this particular moment?
Yeah, I do have a few folks that do look to me as a mentor. And one of the things that really over time that I've enjoyed as a leader is working with employees and understanding kind of where they want to head with their career. And I love to do this with interns and folks just coming out of school. They may have an idea of what they want things to be, but they'll listen to questions or listen to scenarios that I give them, and really you can see things start firing in different directions, and I love seeing that. But even employees that have been in roles for a number of years, talking with them and having conversations around, what's your career look like in 5 years? Where do you want to be? Because as a leader, what success looks like for me is helping them achieve that. If they want to be, today they're a project manager, but they want to be a development manager. That's a different skill set, but there's a lot of things that you can do to build that along the way if you put them in the right situations where they can organically kind of grow their knowledge and ultimately take advantage of making good on what those goals are. So I've had a few of those over the years, just working with employees, and it's to me, very rewarding.
I have another note here. I know we're coming up on the end of our time together, but I wrote down funny anecdotes. I think maybe you might have a couple. I don't know if you have some at the top of your head to share, maybe about coaching or mentoring somebody, or I don't know, anything that comes to top of mind. And on a funny note.
Oh goodness, funny. I should have prepared for that one. Um,
That's a
I
curveball,
mean,
not a softball.
It's usually around holding people accountable, maybe. I know sometimes those are funny stories, but who
yeah,
knows?
it could be holding accountable, but I mean, this isn't funny. But it is
I'm already laughing.
it is something. I said I'm 27 years into my career. Um, but you can learn things from people that are much younger than you. And certainly, I have kids. I learn things from them every single day, about, whether it's how social media can potentially benefit or cause issues, or how AI can potentially be used or not to help you get through some tough scenarios when
Yep.
you're overcommitted on things that need to get done. Um, so I kind of wrap that up with saying, you should be ever learning, and you shouldn't only assume that you can learn from kind of those that have all of the experience in the world. Some of the greatest insights may come from right within your circle, or might come from people that are just coming out of school and have a different perspective. Uh, so not funny, but yeah, just
Thought that came in my mind when you said that, learning from your kids. I remember my oldest went off to London to study for a little bit. He was at Baylor, and they offered a program for him to go over there. And when he came back, I learned the difference between Scotch and bourbon from him, and really figured out he honed my taste for bourbon. So I mean, I learned that from him. That was kind of cool.
that is cool. So he did a lot of practicing over there, I'm assuming,
Yeah,
to
that's where
to
he
really
he
fine
he
tune the
basically
palate.
grew up over there. Yeah, and came back and
Yeah,
was a different human being, but all for the better. All for the better. It
yeah,
was a good trip for him. Yeah, it was great.
awesome.
Yeah, I would mirror and echo that. You learn a lot from your kids, whether or not it's directly applicable to what you're going through that particular moment. Um, it does seem to pop up in other places from time to time, depending on the situation, of course. But
And what I
from
learned from Carson is that 6 may be too many for me, not for him.
well, you're not the only one that's learned that.
Well,
It
you have a
does.
basketball team plus a sub, so
Exactly, exactly,
And
exactly.
how he
You do.
remains so calm all the time, I have no idea. And I've
Yeah.
known him for years.
The thing you shouldn't know, or it not shouldn't know, but you wouldn't or shouldn't want to learn from your kids these days, is the new vocabulary that
Yeah, I
they're
don't get it.
utilizing.
I was
I
just about to
literally
bring
had
that
the
up.
conversation this weekend. I was like, when did Webster's dictionary fail you? And you had
Yeah.
to start coming up with these new meanings for words that have existed for forever.
It's
Yeah.
it's like a part of the word. And
Yes.
usually, it's like the middle part of the word or the beginning of it. Everything just shortened. It's like they're speaking in acronyms. It's a different language. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
It
But it's
is
okay.
acronyms, and it's shortened words, and I get my lessons every day when they get home from school, because I can't believe that they'd actually say it. I'm like, did that actually come out of your mouth? Like
Yeah.
that's
Right.
that's something, that's how y'all have conversations. That's amazing to me, because my friends would look at me thinking back, being like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, but then they
Exactly.
get into the workforce and you've got to learn the lingo, man. It's like another programming language you got to learn.
Yeah, I think Webster is going to be swapped out with Urban pretty soon. Pretty soon.
Well, I'm glad we got to end on a lighter note, but your information and your experience is phenomenal. Craig, I thank you, and Carson, I know this is your show, but I thank you for your time, and I know that you're very busy, so appreciate that. CE, what do you got?
No, just thank you again for taking the time. I know things are popping up left and right from time to time, so be able to spend this time with you and get just a little bit of insight here and there is huge for me. I know it's huge for Eric, but also the audience, just to kind of get that peek behind the scenes, so to speak, that may or may not help them now, but most certainly it's different perspective, as you mentioned. So I do thank you for taking the time out of the day, and we look forward to staying in contact. And as we always say, hopefully there's a part 2 around the corner.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. I appreciate the invitation. It was hopefully it's meaningful for somebody, and looking
I'm sure
forward
it
to
is.
chatting
Yep.
again.
Thank you so much, Craig. Really
Awesome.
appreciate your time. Have a good one.
All right. Take
Thanks,
care.
sir.
Bye.